Well, let's go there then. Let's hypothesize a little bit, Mike. What does the future of work look like to you? And when someone says future of work, how far out is that?
Well, let me tell you, the future of work is a lot more than Zoom.
Of course. And this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I think people got very excited realizing that they could now do video conferencing. I was doing some research on this, and I came across a picture from 1930. It was a early prototype video conferencing booth from AT&T, 1930. In fact, even in 1960, they had this technology. They've been trying to push video conferencing, for almost the last 90 years, long before the internet. And the thing about it is that the technology itself is not really the important part. The important part is, how do we find a new way of working? Because what we've done now is terrible. We've just taken all our bad practices from 2019. Think of all of the endless meetings you were stuck in. And now we've just moved them onto a screen with a camera that's constantly watching your face.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason why people have this sense of anxiety, because you're like in this panopticon of being constantly watched and, having to deal with your resting Zoom face, like, what's my expression at all times? So I think what we need to figure out as we start to go back to the office, the question is not, should we work at home or should we work at the office? The question is, does it matter where we are? Can we find a way of working that's location independent, that it doesn't require us to sit through endless video calls, but there's sort of a seamless interchange between how we interact with other people in our organization, whether they're in the head office, whether they're at home, whether they're a full-time person or they're a freelancer. Like, how do we better design the ecosystem of talent in our organizations, and also design around that new ways of tracking work, running projects, documenting decisions. And this is what I think people miss, is that this 2020 crisis has just broken the mold, but we're a long way yet from rebuilding the organization of the future.
Now let's just pause for a second, Mike, and just remember that we are only human. And I don't know if you agree with this quote, but technology is only adopted at the rate of trust. So if we're going to get to where you're saying we're going to get to, and if we're going to follow this reverse engineering methodology that you kind of lay out in the book, how can a leader listening to this hypothesize and then work backwards to achieve a result?
I think the starting point for any leader is to start with a clean sheet of paper and say, okay, at every level of this organization, from the way I deal with my customers, to the way I deal with my partners, to the way I deal with my team, and even what I do myself, what is the new smart way of doing things? Is there a better way of doing this? And what does this crisis teach me about the future that I had not paid attention to? I mean, that to me is almost the daily reflection that leaders need to focus on, because even at the level of the people around you, the people that are handling this crisis best in your team are the people you want to keep close to you in the future, because we are going to live in a decade of radical change, not just crisis like the one we're in now, but this process of constant reinvention and reflection is going to be something that the best people are going to be good at. So I think that for me is really the starting point. And this is the future of work is going to be a journey. It's not a template or a blueprint, and it's not going to be the same for everyone. But it's let's say one part of it is learning how to harness technology, automation, artificial intelligence to do things that either we can't do or we shouldn't do. But the other, much more important part is, how do we unlock the real latent capabilities of people? What are the things that we can do that machines can't do? How do we really tap into that creative imagination, design-driven approach that allows people to really have much more interesting, fulfilling work?
I think exactly, yes. And in terms of decentralization, you mentioned earlier, empowering other leaders, those people that are performing best right now are the people you want to be hiring. Now, decentralization is a topic we talk about often on the show. How can you empower the leaders and so they can lead their own? Like a starfish, you cut a leg off, it's going to grow back, right? That type of thinking. Explain the term holacracy to me. I just got to this chapter on uncertainty. Explain what holacracy is to our audience right now and how it is adaptive for a company structuring to scale in an algorithmic way, I guess.
Strange enough, holacracy to me is a bit of a dead end. So the idea in holacracy is that you have no job titles, that you have a very rigid framework that governs interactions and governs the way you have meetings. So in a way, they've got rid of one kind of structure, which is hierarchical, titles, department silos, and they create another architecture, which is more like a computer operating system. Where there are cycles and circles and people have different functional roles. So it's a much more distributed structure. The key essence and philosophies behind holacracy are ingenious, but we don't need to necessarily adopt that technical, rigid approach. So for me, the interesting question is, how do you design an organization that's truly distributed? So it's not remote or a work from home organization. How do you design an organization where you have small, agile, empowered teams that are able to focus and drill down on problems, but that their activities are also folded up into higher units of organization, so that you get the balance between tactical problems and big strategy and vision? And this is really, I think, long before the pandemic, the world's smartest organizations have been trying to use these more agile environments to work. So take Marcus by Goldman Sachs, which is has been a very successful experiment for that bank. It's a retail bank run by software. They still have employees, but everyone at Marcus, regardless of their functional role, whether they work in marketing or legal, actually are part of a dedicated pod, they call it, or work stream. So it might be onboarding a new customer or the resetting your password journey. It could be a problem, a pain point, an opportunity. So that really focuses as an agile group what actually drives the content of your deliverable. And being able to break the organization down into those sort of work streams rather than these functional departments is a great example of a more distributed environment for being customer-centric.
Do you think we'll see more distributed networks, more decentralization? And what are your thoughts on, let's just say, blockchain?
Well, to the first part of your question, I think we will absolutely see more distributed organizations. In fact, the whole remote working experiment has shown that we don't have the time to try to centralize management and that you have to trust people to do their work. But if you're going to do it, you need really good data, really good collaboration models, and ways for people to track what's being done. The next layer to your question, of course, is where does that go from here? So I think whole parts of the organization will become more automated. We'll have more smart contracts. Maybe your procurement or your logistics function, parts of that will become autonomous and driven by blockchain type smart contracts. Your finance team will have a kind of a decentralized finance component that handles the way that they, deal with commodity pricing or contracts or hedging functions. So this is just the kind of the logical path, I think, where you're rather than using contracts in the traditional sense, you're actually building intelligence and code and triggers into those relationships between entities, between organizations, between customers and suppliers. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't need people in those areas. I mean, those people actually could become more important. They're the people designing these smart contracts and these smart arrangements. But it just means you don't have all the people in the back office now who are kind of checking contracts, filling in triplicate forms, looking for errors. It's a totally different skill set.
So automation at this point in stage, you say it will create more jobs, but at the end, it will eliminate work itself, virtually.
Well, we're going to go through this moment. It's like someone's taken the snow dome and shaken it. So this is going to be a rough ride for the next few years, because there's no doubt that automation is going to rationalize a lot of jobs. It's going to create a lot of jobs for people that are driving the transition. And on the other side, it's going to create new types of jobs that never existed before. But if you're somebody who says, I refuse to change what I do and I don't want to learn anything new, then it's going to be difficult.